All right, we'll call the meeting to order at 5:32. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Kristen Runge,
Here.
Joe Zitzelberger,
Here.
Trisha Braun,
Here.
Brian Wallace,
Here.
Chris Zellner,
Here.
Sue Springman,
Here.
Mike Steinle.
Hi. Here.
Next item up on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Do we have any corrections or changes to the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
We have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any forms that have been turned in for public comment?
I have one from Greg Gentz, 2106 Foggy Mountain Pass in Waunakee.
Excellent. And Greg, if you don't mind taking the podium and press the button so the light turns green, and you've got 3 minutes to share your thoughts with us.
Yeah, I just want to share some thoughts on the open house for the County Road Q redevelopment. When we went in there, it was about getting information from the public, but it was also about the public getting information of what the project would be entailing. And I know that you guys all want to be responsible stewards of our tax dollars. One thing that was glaringly missing at that meeting was any kind of costs for any of the items that could certainly be on an a la carte basis. It wouldn't have to be a single cost. That goes from widening the medians to the inside median, tearing up the curbs, to removing complete right slip turns at Peaceful Valley. We have no idea if this would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. I would also say that the studies that were provided were really lacking in some objective data. At the meeting, I talked about I'm an objective data guy. There's some anecdotal stories that you could probably find to just about support anything. But this visioning process, without that cost associated with it, I think, and I know that visioning is supposed to be like, what do we like? And all the stuff that they had looked beautiful. And without a cost associated with it, great, go forward with it. But obviously cost matters. I did talk to one of the MSA people there about cost, and thinking that it would be difficult to estimate. He said, no, that's no problem. We have all that. It wouldn't be beneficial to the visioning process. Our system is based on informed consent from its citizens, and I think that was extremely lacking in information. From the standpoint of the studies that were done, there was a study done on the biker lanes that are proposed to be taken out so that the medians can be widened, the on-street lanes. The study for the usage of those lanes was done on a November day in 57-degree weather, and it showed 2 bikers using them. That's pretty ridiculous. In addition, one of the safety concerns is that people can get caught in the medians that are too narrow. They call it a safety refuge, and that's why they want to increase the width of the median from like 6 or 8 feet to 16 feet. Yet they didn't have any study to show how many people were getting caught in that median that couldn't cross the entire street. I asked, is there technology to do that, just like the bicycle traffic? And they assured me, yeah, absolutely there is. We just didn't do it. I think there's a narrative, obviously, that is being put forth to develop the area for possibly millions of dollars of taxpayer money, and we don't have the objective data. Some other aspects of it is that, you know, the aspect of the safety turn issue, or the right slip, right turn at Peaceful Valley, you know, those are all over the place. But of course, if you have a safety issue, you have more of a narrative of, hey, this needs to be redeveloped. The Beltline and K turn going eastbound, that has a right turn slip. That's across a major bike path, multi-use path. And I don't know of anybody asking that to be redeveloped. In Verona, I was a cop there for 5.5 years. I don't ever remember working on the main intersection in Verona that has 3 of the directions as a right turn slip of an accident there in 5.5 years. As far as accidents at those areas of Woodland and Peaceful Valley, I'm sorry, I'm trying to respect the time, but this is very important. Ms. Dees did her homework. I asked her, hey, I'd like some objective data on how many traffic accidents have been at these intersections that are being told that we need to redevelop. Because that's important. That's objective data again, right? And that's what we're being told, that this area is unsafe. I asked her for the vehicle traffic accident data since the area has been redeveloped only 8 years ago for $6 million. And she told me that there had been 0 accidents. She did her work. She said she talked to the police department and asked. And I asked, okay, well, vehicle, okay. What about vehicle and pedestrian? Because that's what we're worried about is those pedestrians in that area. She said, I also checked on that. There had been 0 accident reports on vehicle and pedestrian in those areas. So I would really ask you to be those responsible stewards of our taxpayer money. Get us the information so we can be informed consenting citizens to what you're representing us for. And get some cost data. We know it changes. That's reasonable. Get some cost data. MSA says they have it completely available. And let's do some real traffic pattern data analysis. How many people are getting caught in that safety refuge in the median, and how many people are actually using the bike lanes?
Thank you. We're at time.
Thank you.
Thank
I'd
you.
ask you to table that until we can get that in the summer when it would be reasonable. Thank you.
Any other comments? No? Anyone online? If you're online and would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. We'll bring you in. All right, seeing no one online, thank you very much for coming to the meeting today, making the comment. And let's move on to business item number 1, discuss and take action on a site plan and certified survey map for Goddard School, Waunakee, 1117 Stevenson Lane. And this is page 5 of your packet if you're following along.
So the applicant, Goddard School, is requesting a CSM to combine lots 22 and 23 in Arboretum Office Park, which is at the address 1117 Stevenson Lane, as well as approval of a site plan contingent upon that CSM for an intended daycare use. In addition to comments provided by Strand, there were some comments from the village engineer that are in your packet, but those have been addressed. There are, however, some missing pieces of information. There are some outstanding things like stormwater management plan, erosion control plan, and some amendments to the actual site plan documents that we're waiting for. We've been told they'll be here by the end of the week. And then we did initially request information on potential traffic queuing in the public right-of-way to the satisfaction of Plan Commission. One thing that I would like to note is that there is a daycare in that same office park on a much busier road. There are some queuing issues, but nothing that's been brought to the attention of the village is something that's detrimental to the area. And this is a much lower use corridor. But we do have representatives from Iconica and the designers of this site plan to talk a little bit about it and answer any of your questions.
All right. Thank you. Do you have anything you'd like to share with us? Yes, please.
Yeah, I think we'll discuss the comments regarding the queuing. So a couple things. There's 42 parking stalls on site, which accounts for 2 teachers per classroom, and then the owners and administration for the facility. Goddard, which Michael's here from Goddard School, they require us to have a minimum of 36, so we're above that. Waunakee's requirements were higher, so we're meeting that. Goddard School has a check-in, so you don't just pull up and drop your kid off in queue like you might see at some schools or something like that. So you're required to check in your kid, take them to the class, or make sure they hand off to the teacher. And then, so people are gonna be parking and then leaving. Goddard's kind of data on that is about 5 minutes per student. So we've got 100 and it says 168, we're down to about 167. 7 to 9 is drop off. So you really got, even if I went at 10 minutes, you would have like 14 cars parking at a time, which we've got plenty of stalls from that. And then the afternoon gets spread out much further from 3 to 6 o'clock. So we don't believe queuing will be an issue. So we really didn't show a queuing or a stack plan there because of a requirement, you are parking, bring your kid in, and then.
Yeah, just to be clear, the process is not to queue. You park, walk your child in, sign them over, and you do that, obviously the reverse in the evening. So there's It's not a drive up like at a public school where you drive up, drop the kids off or pick them up. It's park, get out, and then come back. So there is no queuing.
Yeah, so, but I'll answer any questions on that queuing, or if anyone else had any questions about the packet.
So I do have a question, and I'm sorry, and then I'll let you continue. So 7 to 9 is drop off time?
Well,
It's-
there's not a set time.
Okay.
That's kind of the prime
Ah,
time.
okay.
So if someone drops off at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, that's fine. Sometimes there's AM kids only or PM kids only. So you have that dynamic. So there's not a specific time or window. It's primary drop off times are parents going to work and parents coming home.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not like a school where it's 8 to
Right.
8:50.
It's not a bell at
you're in the
7:10 and
door.
everyone has to.
Right.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. Go on, please go on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have other elements that you wanted to talk about or?
Just really address any concerns of the
Okay.
commission.
All right, great. Well, then let's get to questions and let's start with you, Mike.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I have a question. You've addressed the drop off times, but based on my experience, and it's been a few years ago, but dropping kids off, like you said, it staggers in. It seemed like it was much more of a thing at the end of the day when, you know, traditionally it's like 4:30, 5 o'clock tends to be when people are getting off of work. So it seemed like there was more traffic, if you will, picking up kids then. What's your thought on the end of the day?
I don't have any specific data. Observation wise, I think it's busier in the morning. Everyone's got to be at work at 8 or so. The different hours of lunch, people work late, et cetera. The pickup time seems to be a little more spread apart. That's an observation. That's not data on my part.
So you don't think there'll be issues at the end of the
No,
day?
we
anymore than-
operate 650 some schools, plus or minus. I don't know. Got data, right? So about 650 schools. There's no queuing at any of the schools. If we have 36, depending on how many classrooms you have, generally the sweet spot's around 36 to 40 parks. I've not had any issues reported that I'm aware of any backup in traffic.
Okay, thank you.
Sue, did you have questions? Tricia?
Nope, you answered him.
Joe?
I see that there's a spot for a future edition. If that were added, does that change the
We'd-
traffic here?
We'd expand the parking
Okay,
at that point. Yep.
okay.
Depending on what classes might go in there. I think they're, waiting to see how it fills up and what the need is going forward. So depending on that expansion, it's going to depend on the age and number. But we did look at how to add parking to the north part of the lot. Yep.
Two other questions, and first one's probably more for Lauren. Has fire looked at the way that entrance and exit is there?
Yep,
And they're good with that?
yep, they had no comments.
Perfect. And I assume there will be some lights in the back, kind of in
Yes.
that. I'm just kind of more concerned. I think there's a residence, potential residence at least, on the east side. Is there any concern about light spilling over there?
We did a photometric plan in there and
Mhm.
so we weren't getting any light spill. So we do have some building mounted lights to the back and then 3 poles to the one to the southeast.
Yep, and village code requires that building mounted lights be full cutoff fixtures.
Yep.
So engineering didn't have any concerns regarding those.
Okay. Then I'm good.
All right, thanks. Brian?
How many parking stalls did you say again?
42.
You said, so did that change from, because that Tim said 36 in here.
We originally had 36 and then made updates in December with comments where we changed it to single flow and then we added parking stalls. Our count was off from Waunakee.
Okay, all right, and then, yeah, so 46, if you're turning that over in you said at least minimum 2-hour drop-off periods, but
Yeah, it varies between there.
okay,
Yep.
all right. I know you have one in Verona. Do you have any others in Dane County, or is that it?
Middleton's just
Yeah,
built
we
one.
just opened Middleton, but that it's brand new, so we wouldn't have any. It's not fully occupied
Okay,
yet. And we have one on the east side of town. I don't know the village, I'm sorry.
It's things towards Sun Prairie between east and,
Uh,
yeah.
Sun Prairie.
Yep.
Sun Prairie.
okay, all right. Thank you.
Chris?
Simple, I'll just say thank you. This is an area that most communities are in need of right now, and I appreciate you guys considering Waunakee and coming here.
And one thing that I will mention regarding timeline, so because there were so many engineering comments that we were missing, we didn't have the Dane County erosion control permits. We were suggesting, holding off on that until the February Plan Commission meeting for the site plan, so we could have all the engineering documents that we need. They will have those to us by the end of the week. So if you're comfortable with that, you could do a conditional approval to the satisfaction of the community development director. It would help them on their timeline a little bit. They were hoping to get started right after the CSM is approved by village board.
So what would the language be around that? A conditional approval?
Motion to recommend approval of the certified survey map. I'm looking at the wrong one. So it had different lot numbers on it. It wasn't making sense to me. Motion to recommend approval of the certified survey map combining lots 22 and 23 of Arboretum Park to village board. And conditionally approving the site plan pending the submission of engineering documents to the satisfaction of the community development director.
Yes, yeah.
So just for clarification for everybody, so those will be included in what's recommended to the village board. So when they make the decision, they'll have all of that information.
Site plans end at plan commission. So the only thing going to village board is the CSM.
Okay. So what then are the engineering, one more time, the engineering documents that we would need?
Erosion control, stormwater management plan, and then some amendments to the document for clarification.
Okay. But the erosion control and the stormwater management plan don't substantially change the parking lot, the look of the building, the flow of the traffic.
Correct.
Correct. All right. Sue, yes.
I'm sorry, is there a play area? I can't tell from the documents.
Yeah, there's two players.
Just point to
yeah.
them there.
Got the infant and toddler
Okay,
in this area.
you have them. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I just couldn't. That's right.
And what page would we find the erosion? I saw an initial erosion control, I feel like, or a stormwater management.
There's plan on 2.1. It's just all the data. We just got test bit information at the end of December. So our engineer is getting, yeah, I think if you go down 2 sheets, maybe, they're getting all their data and information in so they can submit to Dane County.
Okay.
And the other comments are, there's 2 light poles that we relocated, so they're showing up in the main site plan and our photometric plan. The photometric is correct. They're just not showing up on landscape, fire access, and then this grading and erosion control. So they're right on one plan, didn't get to the other ones.
Okay. All right. And Lauren, when it comes to erosion and stormwater management, what are your thoughts?
Usually those, because they're very formalized processes through Dane County and the village. And this is mostly taken care of through regional stormwater detention. We just require a site-specific stormwater management plan. That can be looked at and approved pretty quickly by engineering and our engineering consultant. So that's not something that I'm necessarily worried about, as long as they get it to us.
What are your thoughts, Plan Commissioners? Joe?
I was actually just going to ask you, within the motion, there was some things about utilities. Has that all been resolved or does that still need to be included as well?
Oh, nope, I believe we still need the utility releases as well.
Okay.
Would we need that to add that to the conditional approval then?
Yeah, so I would do motion to recommend conditional approval of the certified survey map combining lots 22 and 23 of Arboretum Office Park to Village Board. Providing the applicant provides utility easement releases by the remaining utilities with rights to the easement and coordinating with Waunakee Utilities to abandon one set of surface laterals. And then I would do a second motion because site plans end with plan commission, CSMs go to village board. I would do a second motion to approve, to conditionally approve the site plan pending the engineering documents.
I'll make the first motion that you said, Lauren.
Okay.
All right, I'll second. Any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Abstention? No, all right. Motion carries. All right, next motion. Yeah, would you mind? Yeah,
I'm only commenting on it that we're opposing because I'm all for the project going forward, but I just think trying to pull everything together would be more beneficial than, but I also understand there's a timeline, so.
okay. All right. All right,
And then the second motion would be motion to recommend conditional approval of the site plan. Where's my wording? Conditional approval of the site plan, given the outstanding engineering comments from Strand Associates are addressed to the satisfaction of the community development director.
all right. I'm looking for the language here. I can get it right. So motion to recommend approval of the certified map combining lots 22 and 23 of Arboretum Office Park to Village Board with withholding, wait, I'm in the wrong place, am I not?
Nope, so this one we didn't have a recommended motion for because we weren't going to recommend approval of the site plan. So this one would be a
New motion.
new
Okay.
motion.
Would it be atypical to just defer the site plan approval to village board to be considered at the same time as the CSM? Or is that not?
No, because there's no mechanism
Okay.
for village board to approve site plans. It's by plan commission.
All right, well, before we make the motion, what are your thoughts on?
I'm okay, as, well, as
Yeah.
personally, as long as if there's anything that is atypical or even a slight concern, just trusting that Lauren would bring it back to us, I guess, be my
Okay.
only, personally.
Sue? Yeah,
I
Mike?
agree.
Yeah, Joe? Agree? Brian?
Again, a lot of things are just technical documents and I'm
Mhm.
not against staff
Mhm.
approving those, but it seems like there's multiple items here that should probably come back, so.
Okay. Ideally, okay. It should come back. You would agree with that too?
Ideally, but I also don't want to hold up a project.
Okay. Chris, what are your thoughts?
I'm actually okay holding up a project,
Mhm.
but in this case, I'm actually comfortable with it, that we'll get it taken care of with what
Okay.
needs to be done. So
Okay,
I'm good. Do
all right.
you want me to make a motion?
Would you
I
mind?
mean, I would make it, but I don't know what to exactly say. So
I don't know what to say either, so, yeah.
if you give me the wording, I'll say
Yeah.
yes to it.
So motion to approve the site plan conditioned upon approval of the CSM by village board and the applicant providing the remaining notes and documents required by engineering to the satisfaction of the community development director.
Okay, so moved.
All right. I'll-
Second.
Oh, there we go. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed.
All right, and for the reasons you stated, Brian? All right, thank you all very much. Thank you for coming forward today.
Thank
So
you.
we look forward to seeing
Appreciate it.
this built.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pardon? It did.
Yes.
It did. Correct. Correct. All right, let's move on to the next item. Discuss and take action on a request by Jordan and Allison Camps for a certified survey map combining lots 36 and 37 in Golden Ponds addition to Westbridge. This is an item for recommendation to the village board, and it's on page 51 of your packet if you're following along.
So the owners of lot 36 and 37 of the Golden Ponds addition to Westbridge are requesting a CSM to combine the two lots for construction of a single-story house. There is a platted utility easement that runs along the interior boundary of both of those lots that would need to be vacated by all utilities that have a right or interest within that easement. Usually we have them work with their surveyor to come up with what those utilities are and to provide us with those releases. We have a release from MG&E, but don't have releases from any of the other utilities. The rights for Waunakee utilities are usually released by village board, so that would happen with the CSM, but we're still waiting for things like Charter Spectrum, if AT&T has interest in their, some of the other providers in the area. And then Waunakee Utilities is also asking that the applicant work with the Water and Wastewater Department to identify and abandon one set of utility laterals. Because when we build out these subdivisions, we put the laterals already to the lots. They're only going to need one, and for maintenance and everything, we need to abandon one of those. So we're recommending approval of the CSM, but withholding final village approval and signature, subject to the applicant providing utility easement releases by the remaining utilities and coordinating with Waunakee Utilities to abandon one set of service laterals.
All right. What questions or comments do we have? Sue? you wanna
When are
start?
they anticipating building?
Oh, please, yeah, go ahead.
I'm concerned about the time frame for a Charter and a Spectrum, because our company's experience is not good.
Yeah.
The question was, when do we plan to begin building? Sometime in, I guess, the next 3 to 4 months in, yeah, correct.
Okay. All right. Mike, did you have any questions? No? How about you, Tricia?
Nope.
No, Joe? Brian?
No questions.
Chris?
So you're building in 3 to 4 months and we don't have this information. Could we just wait to get the information for the approvals? Or is it needed right now? Kind of what we just had.
Yeah.
My question is
Yeah,
it
we
gonna
were,
delay
sorry,
anything?
we
for
were
you?
notified to start, like the MG&E were the only ones that we were notified that we needed to have, so that's why we had taken care of that, but we can quickly work with whoever's needed on the others, so. We were able to do that within a few weeks.
So if
Yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah, like maybe if we can get the confirmation that the other, easements will be granted or the easements will be pulled back for the others, that just might make it a little bit easier. Rather than otherwise, if we approve today and say Charter or Spectrum does not want to let the easement go, then I assume that we can't combine. That feels
Right.
like it's a more chaotic process. So yeah, a little harder on staff.
Perfect. Do you guys have a list of the utilities that we need to
We can
release?
provide you with one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
quickly
staff will
take
be
care
able
of
to do that.
whatever's needed.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then when you come back to us, you'll know for sure and we'll be able to approve it and then you can start digging a basement.
Okay.
Just to take a litmus test of the committee, though, there's probably no issues here once that's resolved, right?
No.
Well, not for me, for anyone
That's
else. Yeah. All right, thank you. Yeah. Agreed. So thank you. We look forward to seeing you again soon, hopefully. All right. Next item on the agenda. Discuss and take action on a request by Waunakee Remodeling for a certified survey map to divide 1001 Frank H. Street into 2 lots. And this is an item for recommendation for Village Board and it's on page 74 of your packet.
Kristen,
Page
just,
65.
I'll be recusing myself on this one.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the note.
Page 65,
Oh,
sorry.
page 65? I'm sorry.
Okay, so Waunakee Remodeling is requesting approval of a CSM to divide the property at 1001 Frank H. Street into 2 lots. This is where Waunakee Remodeling is currently located. The proposed purpose is to either build a second building or sell the new lot to a potential buyer. It's currently zoned I-1 light industrial and both new lots would continue that zoning, which is consistent with adjacent and nearby zoning. It does meet the minimum lot size for this zoning district, and that is true for both lots that would be created. However, currently the applicant relies on the parking lot on the proposed lot 1 for sufficient parking. If the lot is split off and sold, they would no longer have sufficient parking on their site and would not have legal access to the parking on lot 1 without a recorded parking and access agreement. So staff is recommending approval of the requested 2-lot CSM, subject to the applicant demonstrating either that there will be sufficient parking for the existing business entirely on lot 2, or that a parking and access easements recorded between lot 1 and lot 2 in the event that lot 1 is sold.
Okay. All right. Questions? Should we start on the left-hand side? Oh, you can't ask questions. Chris, you're recusing yourself. Brian?
How is the lot size determined to be at? By acreage or square footage or?
By acreage, so the minimum lot size for I-1 industrial is 1 acre. The new second lot will be 1.71 acres, so it meets the minimum.
Okay, but it does, so, but it doesn't, okay, so it doesn't take into account width of the lot.
It does, in some districts, but this one, I don't believe it does, but let me check that really quick. I can. Minimum lot width is 100 feet.
Okay, and do we know offhand when, and I could understand if we didn't, but like when this was originally platted, was this 1 lot or was it 2 lots?
I don't know what the original plat was, no.
We've got the applicant here. Yeah.
I believe it was originally a 1 acre single lot that Rick and Denise Busta built with a bias to one side for future growth.
All right.
I'm sorry, I meant the whole area was
This was
one
one
lot.
and still is today.
Okay.
All right. Brian, any more questions? No? All right, Sue.
Help me, I'm a little confused because, so you need lot 1 now to meet your parking and you're dividing it so that you could sell it or build another building, in which case you'd need adequate parking on both lots. I would assume you already know whether you can do that or not,
Whether we have adequate parking today?
or what kind of building you would build. Oh,
This is the beginning to start to design what we can put in there for a building and how it fits into our current growth. This gives us the flexibility to either build on it and I say the word split the company, we'd still be Waunakee Remodeling, but operate out of 2 buildings next to each other or sell that off and move part of our business to a different lot, hopefully inside of the Waunakee district. That would take about half of our vehicles. Currently, we have 63 vehicles that park here most every night. Some of our sales vehicles do not, but 63 vehicles that are on site every night. Staff comes, park their vehicles and leave. Splitting this lot would really move about 29 of those vehicles into a new location. On lot 1, if we built on it, we would add additional parking into this space similar to what's next door at the Hub building. There would have to be some re-landscaping of that hill. And if we sold it, we would be selling that contingent on purchasing a piece of land somewhere in the industrial park, building on that. So about half of our staff would no longer go to 1001 Frank H. Street, but would report to that other location.
so the way we would know that the easement occurred or the parking was sufficient is through what vehicle?
They would have to provide that information. If they record an easement, they would just provide the easement to staff. Otherwise, they would need to show that they're meeting the parking minimums for the current
How would you
use.
know that if they sold a lot? If you've divided it?
Well, because the business still exists and the parking minimums are based on the type of business and square footage. So they would need to show that they're meeting the parking minimums entirely on the lot where the business is located.
If I can clarify what I'm hearing is that if lot one is sold, we always say we go through this process, we approve it. If lot one is sold and then somebody comes in, whether it's Waunakee remodeling themselves or it's sold to a different entity and they come in and they put a plan design in front of us, at that point, that's where that parking issue will come to the surface.
Because you're not gonna see anything in a sale. Doesn't come to the village.
No, and that's why we're requiring the easement currently. They would
Oh,
need to
that's not-
either provide the easement to us or show that they're currently meeting the needs on the new lot 2.
So you're requiring that now? I
Yes.
couldn't, okay, wasn't written quite, okay.
And if I can add, we added 3 or 4 years ago, 43 parking spots to our current. So previous to that, we met all requirements for business type and parking. We put that in because we're busting at the seams and we don't park on the street. Now they've put up no parking on the street, but previous to that, we were able to house all of our staff
Okay.
on our current facility. There is one other thing that we could put on here. We do have an ability to add about 24 additional parking spots to our current lot number 2, to the south of the building where it really says lot number 2. And then we can get 13 or so there. It's 118 feet across the building. We can also add about 98 feet along the west edge of the building here, which we currently have parking to this spot. So we could add back in about 23 or 24 spots onto the current lot number 2 if we would lose through a sale, not have access to the 22 spots over at the bottom to the south side of lot 1.
All right, Joe.
If that additional parking was added, what would that do to drainage, and would that potentially throw off that equation too much?
It depends on grading and infiltration, and I don't know what their current stormwater plan looks like.
Okay.
But they do have a private storm easement that crosses the
Yeah.
crosses the lot lines. So my guess is that it wouldn't necessarily create too much of a problem for them.
Okay. And then I assume really the reason that this has to be done is that we can't put 2 buildings on that whole thing. Yeah. Okay.
Tricia.
Regardless of the use of the building or current accommodations, based on our zoning ordinance and parking standards, would lot 2, as it's proposed, without the parking options on lot 1, would that satisfy zoning parking requirements or parking requirements as per zoning code?
Is from what I understand, and this information is coming from Tim, Tim Semin, who did the review of this from a parking standpoint, is that the parking on lot 1 was added to either meet or exceed current parking needs. But whether, I don't have any information as to whether that meets the parking minimum, whether that lot is required for the minimum or for just what the company needed.
So to that end, on lot 2, again, how many parking spaces are there right now?
I don't know exactly how many. We have about 110 total parking spaces on the entire property.
I guess that's just my, my question is, it seems a little bit willy-nilly to say, I would just say if 2 does not meet our current zoning requirements, then it needs to either have the additional parking put in or have the access and easement requirements for the shared parking with lot 1. If it does,
Yeah.
I'm fine. But just to know whether or not that exists would be helpful.
Mike?
I guess my question is more on the long-term use of lot 1. If that's sold off, is there actually gonna be parking there for another business to use? You know, under the assumption that you would continue to use it, I think it's fine, but if this is sold off, it seems like it's a very long, narrow lot that is there gonna be a problem with being stuck with a chunk of property that people can't realistically build on and have the parking and space there? You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Is that a question for me?
Sure. If
So
if you're gonna buy, could you use lot one with? where it's
My
gonna be?
opinion is there is significant room, if you look at the footprint of the hub building, the old Murphy Insurance Building next door, yes, it's 3 stories, but the footprint of that building, depth, you know, in a north-south is significantly less than what we are, and all of their parking for their current building starts to the north of our current lower lot. So there is significant room to do a building up there that would serve our purposes, and we would be able to put more than double this much parking and potentially even still get semis around it. We'd have to get a little creative because there is a bit of a hill here,
Sure.
with some landscaping and rock wall. Again, from my perspective, I own the lot. Whether I build on it, I'll work really well with myself. And if I sell it to somebody, obviously, we'll do everything we need to do to make that a viable property for them.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right, I am looking at the satellite image, but I think it's a little bit more clear when you look at the satellite image than the line drawing of where the parking is. All right, any other thoughts or questions? Okay. So Lauren, then an easement will, the thing I think that I have a hard time understanding, the easement is contingent. So we're not just requiring an easement outright.
No, they would need to meet one of 2 criteria, either prove that parking on site is sufficient, or if they're going to require continued use of the parking on lot 1, they would need to have an access easement recorded.
Would
Yeah,
that need to be
Sue.
an access and maintenance easement? I see people doing access easements and then they forget about joint maintenance.
Mhm.
Normally that would be in
Yeah, but
the,
we don't care about that.
the easement agreement, but it depends on what the
Well,
lawyers come
I
up
guess that's
with.
more their issue.
So, Lauren, can you help me? Where would I find what those requirements for parking on lot 1 would be?
Yep, so it depends on use. For industrial service, manufacturing and production plants, it requires a minimum of 1 parking stall for each full-time equivalent employee on the largest working shift, plus 1 stall for each vehicle owned by the business and stored at the site.
Okay.
And so that would be required for both lot 2 and for lot 1.
Okay.
So that shifting the burden to the owner
Mhm.
to determine if there's adequate parking there.
Yes.
And how does, I'm gonna speak for him, hopefully I'm not misspeaking here, but like he mentioned earlier, that people just come and leave with a truck.
Mhm.
So they're not necessarily in a production role on site. How does that go into that number? Because that really changes it if he's got to account for those people and those vehicles and his own vehicles that are leaving every day.
According to the code, it's based on the number of people on each full-time shift, or for the largest full-time shift. So the way it's specifically written is a minimum of 1 parking stall for each full-time equivalent employee on the largest working shift, plus 1 stall for each vehicle owned by the business and stored at the site. So it doesn't necessarily take into account people who are coming in the morning, grabbing a vehicle and leaving.
Other questions? All right. Do we have a motion?
I have another question, I guess. Is, and I'm, only because it seems like there's a lot of unknown with this for you as well. Is time of the essence for this decision for you?
No.
I don't.
The only thing we're running
Oh.
into is a statutory requirement that CSMs are taken up within 90 days.
Okay.
So we would just need to get written permission from the the business owner that we can extend it beyond that 90-day mark.
90 days from submittal.
Yeah, Sue? Yeah, you just, that's okay.
Why were you asking?
Me? If it wasn't, a chance, I feel like maybe it would benefit you to have a better idea of the ultimate site plan or ideal situation that you would be entering, whether it's to keep additional buildings under Waunakee remodeling on site and have that part of the business, or sell it off, just so you kind of knew what you were dealing with, and it seems like it would be cleaner. But I also, if there was some sort of timing, I don't want to delay any possible plans or things for your growth or whatever you are trying to do either.
So our timing is we need to do something because we keep growing and the construction industry
Yep.
is what it is. So we're using this as, if we can build here, I would engage with engineers to design a space there. And if we can't split it out, then whether I can sell it off or not, I'm gonna start looking for a different site, and whether the whole company moves there or we split and leave stuff on the corridor coming into town and move part of our
Yeah.
company off of this site, that would be the next decision. But I'm kind of looking for some guidance on which direction I can go.
I think we all agree we don't want, we want you to grow there.
Yeah, we want you to grow there. I feel like if we knew how many spaces we needed on lot 2 and what you had now versus like what the gap would be if you sold lot 1 and didn't have access to it anymore. I feel like that's a piece of
So
information.
I could very easily give you the number of current vehicles that we park that would move theoretically to lot 1 if we moved our entire carpentry facility over there, with some ideas of what we're looking for and anticipating growth there, and could provide that information if that would help.
I think that'd be helpful. Yeah, I think just a little bit more certainty. I'm not even sure like what questions we need to be fully asking to make sure that if you do sell lot 1 off, that we leave you in a good situation with lot 2. We do want to see you grow there, if not there within the industrial park, within the borders of the village of Waunakee, because you're really important. But
Thank you.
just a little bit more information would be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, if to expand to expand, you'd probably want another building, and we have to divide this lot, put another building there, even if it's under the same ownership.
Yes.
Although you could have a separate LLC and some different,
We would.
and we do have to do that. That's,
Mhm. Okay.
that makes, we just don't want you to come back and say, now I can't build anything. You prove this would be.
Yeah.
Okay, one more question.
Mhm.
If it is split, is there still, as part of the process, the site plan would still have to come back, which
Yep.
would further adjust the parking?
Yes.
Okay.
And where does the 90 days, because I see the revision says 12/2, is that, but that, I'm assuming wasn't submittal date, or where's the 90 days?
The 90-day requirement is coming from the village attorney. I believe it's a requirement in state law.
And where does that put us? Like, when was it,
Um,
like, it's 12/2 the date, so
Mhm.
we got till March 2nd, so next month would be fine yet, or not?
If that's what you would be comfortable with, and if we're going to run into that 90-day issue, we would just request, or we would send an email requesting confirmation from the applicant that they're fine going beyond that 90 days. It's something we've done before. But we also have to consider that it would need to be, it's 90
Through the
days from
village
submission
board.
to approval, so we also have to consider the village board part of the schedule.
Is it Dan?
Yes.
Right? Could you introduce yourself just so everybody has that?
Dan McGowan, lifelong resident of Waunakee and owner of Waunakee Remodeling.
And would it be fair that Dan can work with you on the parking requirements? just to
Yep.
Make sure we got adequate information, and you're good with if it's next month? All right, perfect.
That
I
is
think-
February 10th.
Yes.
Macy
Yeah.
is the next.
Never get the.
All right, so are we good with that, everyone?
One last thing, I guess it would be helpful. So yeah, I think you mentioned, somebody's mentioned something about carpentry facility. If lot 1 would be carpentry, is that gonna be on-site parking, mostly people working there? or-
No, 80, we have 134 employees, of which north of 85 come to the site every day and then leave and go work in people's homes. So after 7 o'clock in the morning, our parking lot's half full. And then at the end of the day, similar to the daycare, right? We've got 6:30 to 7:30 in the morning where it's very busy, and then end of the day, everybody comes back kind of as they complete their projects for the day.
What I was just gonna mention is it might be helpful, like if, not trying to pin you down on anything, but like if you're, have an idea what the intended split would be, it'd be helpful to kind of gauge for us then to know like how much is gonna be the original lot 2 building versus lot 1, how much parking's needed at both, because here's what's going on and.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep. And I've got some ballparks, but I can share some of that a little more formally. It's about 50-50. Got about 34 vehicles that work almost exclusively on the window side of the business, and that's what would stay in the existing building. It was built for replacing windows. And then we have a kitchen, bath, interior remodeling, siding, getting out of some of the exterior stuff. That's what would be facilitated out of the other building. The other building would probably have a little more of a, retail's the wrong word, but customer facing. Because of a showroom, we do majority of window sales are in home. Kitchens and baths are sold in our facility.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you next month then.
Okay,
Thank you so much for coming today.
thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, discuss and take action on the County Highway Q corridor study. And this is an item for final action to final recommendation to the village board.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're recommending not taking action.
Recommending.
It's, yeah, item 4, it says final action by village board, but are we making a recommendation or just?
Recommendation to village board.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Yep, so as part of the final agreement to amend TID 6 and expand it, the developers agreed to a corridor study for South Century Avenue that had an approval deadline of February 2025. Any changes to the southbound side of the road could be included in the grading and construction plans for Kilkenny Farms West. If the study were concluded after that point, the developers, or after that point, the developers could continue with their existing grading and construction plans. So MSA's professional services was hired in June 2024 and began the plan with the scope of improving pedestrian safety and connectivity and generally beautifying the corridor. They worked with staff through the summer and fall to develop proposals to bring to Plan Commission and the public. You guys saw it in November. We had an open house that was held at the library in December. We had about a dozen people show up. It was a day when it was like 5 degrees outside. We're always wishing for a packed room, but we got some really good feedback from those that were able to come. So they took the feedback, made some amendments to the plan consistent with the feedback, and we're bringing it forward in the final draft form for review by Plan Commission and for recommendation to Village Board, who will vote next week on whether to adopt the plan. One thing that staff is trying to emphasize is that this is a long-term vision. We're not going to go out with shovels in March and completely deconstruct and reconstruct the corridor. There may be some low-hanging fruit that would be prioritized in coming fiscal years based on availability of resources, or, it might be pretty easy to plant a tree in a space where there's going to be a whole lot going on based on this plan. But ultimately, it's a 10 to 20-year vision that would be implemented over time as maintenance starts coming up and it starts coming into the CIP. So that's one thing we want you to keep in mind while you're listening to the presentation. So I've got Steve Tremlett here from MSA, and he will go over the final draft plan.
Right, so were there changes made from the last time we saw it?
I will go through that.
Yes? No?
Yes.
Is that in our packet? We seen it, or we're gonna see it now? I'm just wondering what I'm looking at.
Yeah, the changes are not called out in the packet, but I think.
There's a memo on page 76 and some exhibits after it.
Do I need to be upgraded to a panelist? Okay, sounds good.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for coming tonight, Steve. So-
So yes, as mentioned, this is a long-term vision plan. As scoped, it was looking at opportunities to improve safety, enhance the corridor. I did mention, and I'll re-mention that I knew that some topics would come up of some of the costs. I hit on a bigger part of it, which was the medians. Again, $100 per linear feet of curb and gutter impacted, 5,000 per inlet. And so I'll come back to that. Obviously, we didn't price out the past sidewalks, landscaping at this time as part of the scope. Kind of wanted to do a greater view of what this could be and definitely see that as a next step. As mentioned here, this vision is the first step. We did a little bit of just value engineering, just looking at a few pieces of it, but really this is not the engineering look of that can more formalize a cost. So, with vision plans, we did have several meetings with staff as mentioned. So, we've talked about some of these improvements of what that might impact and was decided to keep moving forward. And as we met, there were some points about less than 10 years of that road in existence, but wanting to allow that information go to the public for reaction. And so tonight's the Plan Commission 2 with potential board approval of the plan. I think I mentioned this last time, I'll go just quickly on speed data showing that northbound traffic coming into town is higher than desired speeds. That was reinforced to the open house of they're not following it at all. They also, someone observed saying even that southbound is speeding up quickly as they exit. We show in the speed limits that we've had that it was more compliance, and Woodland is showing decent compliance. Part of this process was not shared last time is our traffic counts. So we did do counts in 4 locations, basically each of the blocks through this corridor, because previously all you had to go on for DOT was from north of County K was around 12,000 to 13,000 ADT over time. And then north of the high school was showing 10,000 to 11,000. So no data for this corridor at all. What we can glean from this is it was 13,600 north of Woodland and roughly 16 to 17,000 in the middle section. And then it gets to 17,000 plus a little bit by Meffert. So what you can denounce for that is there's a noticeable diversion of traffic on Woodland, but hold steady within 16,000 through the corridor. And yes, it was, we did decide to add in to look at bikes. That was an add-on that we felt was needed for the fact of what we were recommending here. And it was, I believe it was actually 3 south of Woodland and 2 north. We wanted to do it when school was in operation. And it was 50s degree weather, which is actually pretty decent for October. But I'm not saying that's what I'm hanging my hat on. It's also observations of, yes, there is biking that's happening on Woodland, been noted, but less so through this corridor. And as we'll get through further is, so the amount of traffic using the multi-use path, and we're trying to extend it all the way through, and then having a separate on street that was very limited use, that if there are benefits for safety, especially is the main key here, we felt that there was still a need for the consideration of combining the biking to be off-road, but we reduced that extent. We'll go through that tonight. So I kind of hit on this a little bit again, landowners, stakeholders. Some have noticed the observation of that slip lane. I will clarify from our last meeting, if you recall, that question was about the slip lane. Why did they put it in initially? There is a red light there, so it is not intended for just free flow, but it is for convenience of vehicles. Adding the 4th leg to the west, that will impact visibility of what people are looking at. In talking to our mobility team for a road of this character and scale of use, yes, you see that in highway corridors, it's becoming less and less attractive as an option to put in slip lanes. So things change over time of good practice over time. And so that's one thing we were considering here is that change might be beneficial, especially with the 4th leg going in. Open house, safer intersection and crossings was a high priority. We asked a question on, granted, we had 12 participants, so I will caveat that again, but comments on our comment form were that both those major intersections of Peaceful Valley and Woodland were not safe. some question that wider median refuge is necessary. It was noted by the gentleman that opened this meeting that we don't have data specifically to who's getting stopped and who is not, and how much safer is it? But, you know, you can glean that a 6-foot space, if cars do turn left and right while the greens are happening on Woodland, that will impact some students to be able to get across. And then also, once it gets darker, this time of year with school activities happening later, it can be impactful. So I again, am showing an option that there are plenty of roads that have seen this 12 to 16 refuge area for safety purposes that has more curbing barrier around it. And so that's still presented in this vision plan. So again, just repeating the 4 big ideas was safer intersect crossing, increase comfortability for pedestrian bikes, 3, improve pedestrian connectivity, and beautify the corridor. So here's the main point I wanted to make on that idea of bike lane removal and widening medians. So we looked at, and I'll get through it, reducing where that section is that we eliminate bike lanes, and where do we actually need to expand the medians is primarily at Woodland and Peaceful Valley. So previously we showed around 3,800. It's got an extra 0 there, 3,800 with 20 inlets impacted. This updated version shows 1,430 linear feet of impact and 3 inlets. So it's significantly less. It's 3 times less of the cost for what we're showing for that change. Again, the idea of lighting these respite areas, an example of between Sarah Lane and Woodland, where the green you see is where the existing path is. It was constructed much closer to the road, a few feet off the curb. If that site maybe redevelops, maybe that's the time to think about pushing that trail about a foot or so off of that right-of-way line, which gives that extra space for not only the buffer zone of comfortability, and if you had trees in there, that kind of separates it from the road. It also allows for aesthetic enhancements. Improve pedestrian connectivity, notably that there will be consideration of a multi-use path north of Woodland on the west side of the road, all the way to Centennial. Then south is already planned for going from Woodland, preferred to go all the way to Peaceful Valley with that and crossing at that point. And then on Peaceful Valley, there is no sidewalk or path on that south side, still suggesting that that would have a sidewalk with a traditional terrace, and it would go down to 1 single lane there. So it already turns to 1 lane as you go east. And so this would just take it down to 1 lane as you cross over Century or County Q at that point. So we also were noted that there were people that speed up through that section to try to get down to 1 lane. If you already come down to 1 lane as you go through that intersection, you kind of eliminated that need to speed up. Noted the lights. It's noted in there, you have the current median lights that have no banners. It is more of your traditional DOT lighting. Could short-term think about painting if you don't want to replace now to match the aesthetic that you have, potentially adding the pedestrian lights. Long-term, maybe they are replaced to match that similar style. But the idea that I didn't hear anyone specifically saying, we don't want the additional pedestrian lights. I think that was a strong reinforcement that they see that benefit. Again, this is a very wide road. Those current lights are only lighting up somewhat of the corridor for vehicles, not for pedestrians on the edges. And then there's a landscaping theme that is shown throughout. And again, the idea of there's canopy trees and there's ornamental trees that are kind of mixed in, create that kind of repetitive character. And there are some vertical type canopy trees, which is the upper right. So there are examples where if it is close to commercial, it doesn't always have to be the expansive canopy trees that blocks everything. So changes from last month. Here's what we're talking about. So one item, again, I think we're promoting the idea when you remove a bike lane, that you should have a ramp. That's kind of the best practice now, is that you're allowing that ramp up from the on-street to the multi-use path. So those little orange circles are areas where we're showing where those ramps are. So previously Centennial Parkway, it was right after that intersection going southbound, is where we had that ramp and where the bike lane stopped. We've now extended it to almost to Woodland before you get to the intersection. See if you can see my mouse or not. Yes, so right here versus up here.
Can you use that as, because I'm lost.
Yep.
I don't know where you're going.
Okay, so previously the bike lane ended around where this tree is right here. And it moved down here. So there is a bike lane that runs still all the way to this point, then comes off-road. On the northbound traffic side, not changing anything. So that bike lane remains. However, I will get to that. We are going to reduce the radii of that northeast corner of that intersection, but the bike lane still remains. So now at this point, going south of here off Woodland, there is no bike lane for that segment up to Peaceful Valley. So we'll get to where that lands as we go forward, but basically it would southbound. So I guess it is over on the southern image. Sorry. There's pictures of people. They're in my way. On the southbound, it picks back up just past, move that out of the way, right here. So right past Peaceful Valley is where the ramp will take you back on road. So on road would go south of Peaceful Valley. On the northbound here, coming in from the south, see, it disappears every now and then. Here we go. Whoop. It would go off-road at this location here, going northbound on the east side. So previously it was before Water Wheel. It was down here. So we extended it all up to really to look at the two major intersections. So this improves Peaceful Valley and Woodland. It kind of reduces the scope of where that bike lane comes off-road. And then you'll see, and then when we get to the detailed concept, so that's a newer graphic that I'll show next, showing a little bit more detail and more thought on mixing of the trees and the plantings to go with that. So this is new. This wasn't, we had the schematic version previously. This is looking at in more detail. We are showing bike lanes in green only for display. We're not suggesting you need to paint those, but it was hard to read otherwise. So I wanted to at least demonstrate where that number 2 is up on the north end. Again, that's that bike ramp. That's where that bike lane ends. Bike lane's still on the eastbound. But what you see here then right now, if you went out there, that northern median of Woodland is all just asphalt. So here you're bringing in grass, a couple of trees, some trees, ornamental or the purple trees, the canopy trees are the green ones. There's some planting beds on that tip of that portion as well. My mouse working again, there we go. Right up here, planting bed there. Still carrying forward the idea that was brought up. If you are going to remove the bike facilities on road, but not even that point, is like for families, it was noted by, from the interviews that this link that goes from Woodland, I wish it was better. Right now you do a direct right turn and a direct left turn. And so cutting into that hill some and have a more fluid safety route. Then you can also, again, I mentioned last time, do something like that. Number 3 is that image where you have a little limestone wall. You can say, welcome to the village of Waunakee. And then number 3, where that little, number 3 is circled, that could be some plantings. So you're creating kind of an entry feature there. And then as you go south, again, you're seeing this balance of there's a pocket of plantings in the median on the south side of Woodland. But, and then there's some plantings on the side that goes with the lighting. Again, the purple is pedestrian lighting. The orange are existing median lighting. And so where you see the white in the medians, that is the area that would be improved. So the black line is existing. The white boundary is what would be reconstructed. So you can see that I was trying to minimize how that is being, how much of that linear feet are being impacted to get the achievement of a wider crossing refuge. And again, I should also note, the low-hanging fruit is definitely to paint the crosswalks, the ladder style. It's very obvious where that path is. That's the lowest hanging fruit that's out there. But, and you see that in all the intersections. You'll see that to reduce how much you need to amend the medians, what we achieved here is just basically you create a buffer painted area for that left turn lane. So you see that crosshatch right here. So we're not touching the median curb at all. We're making it up for that section. We're not trying to have a crossing or anything. So there's no reason to impact that median. We're focusing at the intersections only and figure out how do you work the corridor for the areas that you aren't touching. Again, we did truck movements here. So this is at Woodland again. You see a lot of squiggly lines, but the main point is the black proposed and how all the turning movements into that are beyond that black line even. So even bringing that corner in from what is gray makes a tighter curve. What's the benefit of that? If you have a tighter curve, vehicles usually have to slow down a little bit more to make that bend, and they're more aware of what's going on versus a tighter corridor that allows people just to flip through that. And then this is where, look at Peaceful Valley, where number 7 is over here, is where that slip lane is removed. So in its place, you see a right turn lane there. But that is, again, is a tighter curve around there. Vehicles will stop more often and there'll be a stop bar before the crosswalk. So you're a lot more visible of people walking across than the current slip lane that runs through there. It does afford then the opportunity to put in a little respite area at number 7. Here and some plantings that kind of give that buffer zone. So number 1 is safety. 2 is then you have aesthetic opportunity there as well. And so you see where the white ties in, just here, down to there, tie in where you have that whole left lane there. So that's an example of a bike lane that you come up off the road. Again, turning movements, looked at that where it was recommended by Strand when we reviewed it that one lane should be 19 feet from curve face to curve face. So if a vehicle stalls, you have abilities to get around it. And then south, closer to Water Wheel, that was an area. So we focused on the 2 major intersections with the detail. So this is going back to the schematic plan again, that just shows where there's still interest. There was interest in a gateway sign that came out in the open house as well in the median. And that can be kind of tied to the planting that you have there. Otherwise, it's kind of the spacing of the trees, ornamental trees more in this corridor section than everywhere else. And again, we only put the pedestrian lights where there is a path. So you're only seeing that purple on the east side through this stretch because there's no planned at this time path on the west side. So went through it quick. Welcome to go back. Take your questions.
All right. Chris, can we start with you? No?
I'm making my notes right now for questions.
All right.
I'll go second.
All right. How about Brian?
I have a question that might help. This is
All right,
really
there we go.
interesting.
Yeah.
Steve, it would be maybe helpful, or maybe this is even, and Lauren, and the reason that this study was requested in the first place, and Steve, you mentioned it when you first started, was the village board was considering Tierney's development plans, the plats, or the site plans. And so the whole, pedestrian, vehicular safety, traffic conversation came up. What are the biggest differences between what was being proposed in that plan versus what we're seeing in the recommendations? I think that would be helpful to understand.
Anything that was included in their plans, I don't believe has changed. What we're trying to do is change the spaces around it. So the width of the medians, where the location of bike lanes are, pedestrian lighting, things like that, trying to make it a more pedestrian friendly and welcoming corridor. But we intentionally tried to stay away from making any major changes to what the plans for the Kilkenny West side of the road is.
And I'd add, I remember connecting with Steve a couple months ago, maybe asking very specifically with regards to Yeski Drive and then the Peaceful Valley extension, and then the on Kilkenny site work that be occurring to the west, whether any of their recommendations changes the scope of what the Tierney have proposed. So if you could answer that question, perhaps, Steve, for the Plan Commission, that'd be helpful.
Sure. So yeah, I was asked to provide that letter. I noted that there is no intention to impact. You don't see any white on the western side. The only thing I noted in the memo I provided is potentially the option. Right now, we have that crosshatch for that left turn lane at Yeski. That's, 3 feet or so. If it were to modify that design, you could touch that, but I'm showing how it could work without even touching that median there at all. But you could balance that 3 feet back into the median if it wasn't constructed, but obviously there's design that would have to go into modifying that. There's 2 inlets impacted. So I just noted that it's not constructed, but otherwise, no other thing of shown here at all impacts that development.
And I brought up that question. I remember I was chatting with Jerry towards the end of construction season, wondering, gosh, is there any chance that MSA knows enough at this point already about their site that might allow them to jump on some of their improvements to prepare for future users? At that point, I mean, it's good information. It was too late in the construction season. But still, that was the outcome based on MSA's review.
Other questions, Tricia?
Not.
No. Right.
I'm confused. So nothing on that side of Kilkenny West has to change. And if this plan gets adopted, it gets changed later, and that's a city cost.
Nope, I don't think,
Village.
I don't think
cost.
MSA's advice is anything different based on the proposal we see for Kilkenny West. Correct?
Wait,
Correct. There's potential trees that could be planted that are not part of the current Kilkenny Pass plan. There's already intention of the path. I don't know if it's supposed to extend all the way to Peaceful Valley.
you have in here that would affect their side has already been incorporated.
Correct. Their edge lines of the curb and gutter and where a path would be is unchanged through this vision. There will be aesthetic improvements that could be happening at times, at some point along the corridor,
So,
within that terrace.
so in that area, and I'm looking specifically where it says number 7,
Yep.
and then there it shows a couple of light poles and a couple of canopy trees there. Isn't there already a bike lane on the current road there?
Currently, yes. So
So, but is this drawing depicting that that's what that would look like? And I know we're getting specific to one spot here, but is this drawing depicting that that bike lane stays in or that it gets changed?
that it gets changed. So it got reduced of where we showed it initially, but now it's gonna be right before. I'll go back up.
And it gets changed by who?
Ultimate decision of when you might want to do a partial or larger project.
The landowner or the village?
It would be the village
Okay, that's.
choice to move forward with any of these improvements.
Okay.
So again, green was intended just for illustrative purposes. On the north end coming in southbound, then number 2 is where it comes off of the on-street to the path and doesn't get picked up until after Peaceful Valley. So from here up to before Woodland, it's off-road, but we have a path that go right off of it. On the east side or northbound, you get off here prior to the lane. Now, that could be up here or further back. But I kind of wanted to do, you'd rather want to do it before the right turn lane. And then it picks back up basically where it just doesn't, it just starts at Woodland. So it doesn't get impacted. So that this bike lane here that exists is where it would pick back up.
So my understanding that we're basically taking people off the bike lane on the road
For
around
about
the
2.5
intersection.
blocks.
So
Yes.
we would expect that cars and pedestrians are separated. Cars have an easier path to flow if they're not looking to see if there's somebody on the road next to them. And pedestrians are, protected a little bit because they're not trying to negotiate that intersection on the road because they're using the bike path.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the numbers. If you've done, there's surveys out there in general understanding that families and inexperienced bikers are going to ride on multi-use paths or sidewalk more so than this corridor on road. So the people that we're talking about moving off-road by choice would be the experienced riders that may stay on road through that segment. You do have 2 lanes in both directions. And so those cases are the ones that might stay on road, but we're offering a safe way to get off. But general speaking, I would say 90% of the ones that are biking through this corridor will be wanting to be off-road the entire way.
All right. Brian, other questions? Not right now.
I think one related point to the prior conversation about what's happening on Kilkenny West, and I just want to be really, Steve, I want you to be really clear about this. Is there any corridor enhancement that you're proposing here that in your opinion has to be done, that would be, foolish not to be done prior to giving the green light for those connections that's being planned on Kilkenny West? I think the answer is no. I think it's that these are ideas and proposals, and the timing on these doesn't have to be connected to giving the green light for those two connections from Kilkenny West. I just want to be really clear on that point.
Yeah, the only clarity I'll give, because I think it's best practice, is think about where the utilities are intended, if they are being put in, how that may impact some of these suggestions that you may move forward with to reduce costs on the road. Doesn't have to happen, but just something to consider is where those utilities are. But for infrastructure, no, this is not touching that at all.
And then one other thing I would add, because there is a question about effect on private property. This is all happening within the right of way, with the exception of number 3, which would be in coordination with the school district because that's where the path is on the school property.
The black line is the right-of-way line.
Yep. So other than that potential cut through at number 3, all of this is happening within existing right of way.
Right. Chris, did you have any questions?
Yes.
All right, go for it.
Sorry. Thank you. Is that better? Okay. Choices. I mean, we're gonna have choices based on what you're giving with this visioning. And I'm struggling with the fact that we're looking at this when we have not a lot of data yet. We don't have a whole subdivision that's going to be going in. Is this gonna be better for semis or worse with the way we're designing it now? Because we do have, and we did plan for a grocery store to be on the corner on the other side. And if we're changing the road there, is that gonna impact the ability of that grocery store now to say, well, we can't get our semis in there properly? I don't know if that's the case. I'm not traffic, but I'm thinking when this was originally done and platted, it was planning for that as well. Of course, we have not seen a great deal of accidents or any type of injuries for people walking in this area. So I'm struggling with the whole concept of having to upgrade this. I also know from being a former teacher, being married to a teacher, that if we put medians in the middle, it doesn't matter how big they are. If they're little kids that are out there, they're going to walk off the median and not pay attention at points, unless there's an adult with them. I know the school has made efforts that they want to make sure they have crossing guards at school times to make sure that the kids are getting across there safely. I also know when I was a kid in this community that I took my bike and walked everywhere in the community. It didn't matter what highway I was crossing or doing. That's just the way it is. Today's parents, with regards to safety, everybody wants people to be safe. Most of them are driving their kids. It's just a matter of what the situation is. So I'm struggling with the whole concept of why we're doing this, frankly, when we have other areas that are drastically more needed. I look out at our Culvers area where we've had many accidents right now, and we're not talking about that. That's going to be coming in the future, I'm assuming. But we have a whole new area of housing over in that area, which is in increased traffic over there. That traffic is also coming west. So those things are all, I feel like we're not taking into account all the different changes and things, and we had planned for schools and housing to go in there and a grocery store. And at that time, it was okay, apparently. Now we're making some changes, and we look at a long-range plan, 10 to 20 years. Well, it's not even been 10 years. In 10 years, we might be changing again before any of these things get done. Is that kind of what I'm hearing when you say that things change over time? That's a problem to me. I'm really frustrated by that when I hear that. So visioning, yeah, we have a downtown that we spent a lot of money on, that we put in great, beautiful light poles and did that for our downtown. This is a highway coming into the community currently. Maybe in 15, 20, 25, 30 years, we need new lighting, but we have brand new lighting in there at this point. So I'm struggling with the whole concept. The board has made the decision they want to do that, so I'm trying to listen to their wantings in this portion. But I'm not even getting to everything here. I live in that area. My workplace is in that area. I see how many people walk on the paths. I see the traffic and what the traffic looks like all day long, different times. So I have a lot better feel than I think your studies do for that reason. Because when you're coming in and you're doing this time and that time a couple times, that's a lot different than seeing it on a daily basis, in my opinion, which I have. And I've walked this many times, but I don't see a lot of people walking down in this corridor. It's not like people get excited to walk on the highway. They just don't when people are there. They're going to go on our other beautiful trails that we've put in throughout the community and walk in those areas or throughout the subdivisions. So I just don't see the highway as the major thoroughfare of the walkers. Bikers, yeah, I do see bikers and a need for them to get around our community. But are they going to Middleton? Are they going, because that's really where this is headed. We're going to Middleton on this road. I don't know if that's the case or not right now. And I don't see that in the study that talks about what the bikers' real needs are. So maybe I'm being strong and it's not at you. Don't take it as it's at you. I'm more looking at what the need is for why we're doing this in such a time where we did take these things into account. We put up poles that were recommended. We put in the lighting that was recommended. I don't know where else in the community we have a lot of lit paths throughout the community that people are walking on. So we're talking about doing those things. I think that's all great if we could afford to do all of it throughout the community, but I don't see that as a primary need right now. I look at our Main Street and I say, how are we going to get people across Main Street? Sue was on the board when I was on the board. And when they talked about, we're going 4 lanes down Main Street. It's hard enough on 2 lanes to get across Main Street now, let alone 4. So we talk about safety. There's no medians going to be on Main Street. It's not going to be wide enough to put medians in. So to get people across that traffic. So my point in all of this is I can't recommend this at this point because it's talking about something that doesn't need to be talked about yet. Nor do we need to. So maybe I said too much. I didn't ask you any questions, so maybe
I
I'll.
think the only one asked, if I can answer, is does it impact trucks? I think that was the only main question.
Semis.
Yeah, so we showed turning movements of the 2 intersections that we're touching, and we presented as trucks and how that could be run through there. Again, that was only impacting the northeast corner of Woodland and reducing down to 1 lane on Peaceful Valley. That's the only area that we reduce lane or turning movement. Everything else is within the same amount of width that you have in lanes currently. If all it is removing the bike lane and a portion of it. So that doesn't change how trucking can
None of
maneuver
the
through.
slip lanes or any of those changes won't impact the semis? If we modify that like you're talking?
I mean, it'd be a harder turn to make onto Peaceful Valley. I don't know how much trucks are using Peaceful Valley for that purpose.
Well, we were gonna have them coming out different ways. And I mean, I know that that's something that we need to consider as we're talking about this is what I'm getting at. Because that is gonna be important. I feel bad because I don't want to even bring up grocery store in the community, but that is what was planned there. And I want to make sure that it's set up right now and the pad is there and ready to go. They put all the infrastructure into that already. Now, if we change some infrastructure in that zone, that I don't want that to impact that potential.
So there is a truck. I mean, I said it's just gonna be harder. It's not.
Truck or semi? Truck or semi?
Well, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact size that they did the study for.
Okay.
But it was tested to what's required when you do that review.
Okay. Okay.
Which
Thank
would
you.
generally be a 53-foot trailer.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wrestle with this for a lot of the same reasons that Chris brought up. The part that I think I have the most concern about is if we don't go down this road, are we tying ourselves to things that, we thought we wanted, but not what we maybe should do? I guess maybe is there an opportunity cost to making a decision one way or the other? I like what I see. Not knowing the costs is a concern. Maybe this is a good question for Lauren. If we recommend this to the village board, we're not really committing to anything. We're saying, yes, this would be wonderful if we can do it. When it comes to actually finance that, the village board is still going to have to take action and make those determinations, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's,
Anything else? Right. Tricia, anything else?
No, I think I generally agree with Joe. I do like the idea of having a corridor at every gateway into the community, and having something that stands out and just says, like the, just a nice entrance. That said, I think not knowing what may happen with Main Street eventually, if there is some like different truck route because of the increased traffic on Main Street, we need to try to divert some of that. Where is it gonna go? That could be pushed over to here. So to make sure that we are accommodating larger vehicles and maybe not just those that are going to a potential grocery store, but just general truck traffic to be accommodating for that. And I think I heard 10 to 20 years, this potentially is a good plan. I, again, go back to the beginning of this, and the impetus was holding back on giving a go-ahead on a project without knowing like what other things could look like. And it feels like we have some good recommendations and the ability to do that, give some guidance for future decision-making. I don't think, just based on my use of that area and what I've seen back and forth, both pedestrian and cars, I don't think we need to rip anything up and take anything out at this point. I think this is just, I'm seeing this as guidance going forward.
Sue?
I agree with some of the comments that have been made. I drive that corridor a lot. And I don't blame MSA for any of this because you were told to do this. It's not your fault. My concern is that I think it's premature because we do not know the full impact of the development that's going to occur in that corridor yet. There could be things that are different than this that might be needed. There could be tweaks to the safety in certain corners, especially by the school, that corner, et cetera, that we would want to implement. And I think maybe one of the ways to solve this is, instead of saying that we recommend approval, is we accept the plan for future consideration as development occurs and need and fiscal sustainability, or whatever word, fiscal reasonableness is, or what's the word I want? Fiscal affordability occurs. Because right now, I think it works pretty well, and it isn't that used for bikes or pedestrians. It is somewhat, but there's just not enough people there yet. It's much more auto, come in and out and go to a restaurant, go to a gas station, et cetera. And we have so many needs in this community. It's not that that we don't have to ever do any of this, but I don't want to adopt it. I would rather accept it, and then we use it as a framework as time goes on. It's just.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Mike.
That's some good thoughts. Just a few questions, just to clarify, just so I'm understanding this. The gentleman that was up here earlier, if I understood right, there have been no accidents on this since it's been done. Is that true?
That's what Lauren mentioned, yes, correct?
For Lauren, so I knew somebody. had mentioned it.
Yeah, so I looked up the DOT crash data, and I honestly, it was long enough ago, I don't remember what the exact results were or which specific intersection I was looking at. I think it was at Peaceful Valley, and there weren't accidents at Peaceful Valley, but there were accidents at Simon Crestway.
Okay. So, but is it fair to say there have not been significant number of accidents, and this was all redone 8 years ago or whatever? Is that fair?
Only for that specific spot that I was looking at.
Okay. I'm curious too, we've had traffic counts on this. How does that compare to the traffic counts on 19 and Main Street? Because it seems to me that, I guess to Chris's point earlier, I've always felt like there's a lot more traffic on Main Street coming that way than up Q. Is that a fair assessment? Do you have that information?
Unfortunately, I have Madison Street on here. I didn't have that exact number. So just for reference, then Madison Street North Main is at 14.8. So I don't have Main Street on here. We could look it up probably real quick here if we wanted to give that answer. But just noting that street even is within this framework of traffic. And obviously, as it develops, it's going to increase, right? This is like a baseline right now where we're at with the amount of developments there.
Main Street downtown is a little less than 15,000 a day.
So it is about equal to what this has got then roughly,
Actually, a little less.
a little less. Okay, and then if I'm understanding right, and I know there's a lot of back and forth on this affects what Tierney's are doing on the east side, not at all. Either way, what they're doing is what
Correct.
they're doing, and it won't
Correct.
be. what
Number
they're
one
doing
thing is to show that it was not impacting to do these improvements. There's things that could be put in the terrace and such, but that's not impactful to their infrastructure improvements.
And I know we talked about this a little bit before, but just if you were to talk in today's dollars, to do the whole thing, A to Z, what kind of money are we talking for doing this project?
Well, so the only thing I quantified at this point was that the reduction in the median improvements related only to curb and gutter and the inlets is down to roughly $150,000. And that was from 500,000 when we last talked. Obviously, we talked about the northeast corner, and the slip lane. And then it depends on what trees you put and how much planting. So, you know, I could see it being between 600,000 and 1.2, maybe if you did it all, but I could be shortchanging it. I'm not the engineer on that. That's what I can throw at you right now. And that's something you'd want to actually get an estimate on. But I just wanted to give a ballpark. If you're asking, that's where I land. I don't know if that's exactly on. You have contingencies of when you would do it, what the costs are at that time. And if you value engineering different than what I presented.
So, but it's just, you know, when you've got people asking in the community, how much is this gonna cost to do this? And they're
Yeah.
seeing pictures. It's nice to have some sort of a ballpark to know.
Sure.
You're talking 600,000 or you're talking 1 million or what is.
The number of lights, I would say, could be a qualifier to escalate that number. Like, so I want to qualify it that I would want to talk to my team more to have that exact number. I think you could do most of the majority of this definitely below 2 million. If you did it all at one time. But I would assume that you would look at incremental improvements in some cases where it's when money is available or it's the most important thing. Like I said, low hanging fruit, do the pavement markings, number one, I think, honestly.
Anything else, Mike?
I'm good.
No,
Thanks.
yeah. I like the aesthetics of it. I like I love the plantings and the, you know, the refuges where people sit. And I think you did a great job with that. Thank you for listening and taking the time to interview the community. You did exactly what we asked you to do and you came up with great ideas. And then we asked you to change and come back again and you did that again. And you've got some really wonderful ideas here. I like the idea, Sue, of accepting the plan. I mean, part of the issue is that at some point, we hope Hy-Vee comes in, right? And so redoing particularly the section of the road that's close to Hy-Vee, and providing them with a disincentive, but, you know, I feel like we're on a teeter-totter with them all the time and it's gonna tip it one way or the other depending on what we do. Not that they're coming anytime soon, but you know, being just really conservative about making any changes that would dissuade somebody from locating there. And then once we kind of know what the buildings are and who the tenants are going to be, then we can enact some of these things. I think the pavement markings, no brainer. Like we should be doing, yeah, we should get a bucket of paint and do that tomorrow. So I you know, think Sue, you came up with a great compromise. Like we're interested in it. These are great ideas. The concern seems to be really around not having that area firmed up yet and not being sure at this point in time if we make changes, if that long-term is going to, you know, benefit us or if we're going to come back and think, oh, I wish we would have waited to do that a little bit longer. Yeah. Joe.
Is there any formal action that we need to take to allow Tierney's to go forward with what they're planning to do? Is that part of kind of why we have the recommended motion that we do? Or?
There's nothing in this that's affecting what their plans are.
Yeah.
So the original reason that we needed this done by February was in case they were, in case the plan was going to affect what their plans were. But in this case, we did everything we could to make sure that it did not have a direct effect on what the plans were for Kilkenny West. So I don't know necessarily, and maybe Todd, you can correct me on this,
Well,
that
yeah, and I wouldn't say that that was by intention, that we pursue this study to make sure that it doesn't impact stuff to the west. That was discovered by virtue of the research and the evaluation that was completed, that the work that the Tierney's are doing to the west does not have to be altered to achieve some of the goals that are proposed here. So I think my perspective with the board is that you're going to be in good shape to do the very same thing that Sue suggested, to accept the study, essentially, green light to the plans as proposed by the Tierney's to the west.
Okay.
That's my take. I think we said the same thing.
Yep.
One in a lady's voice, the other in a guy's voice.
All right. Yeah, go ahead,
Could I
Todd.
just throw just a couple perspectives to, when I look at first of all, I think Steve and his team did a real nice job. He brought in some real good talent from their firm, and I think they thought very thoroughly through this. As I look at it, I see two elements overlaid with one another. One is, how does it work? And the other is, how does it look? Now, I'll be honest with you. I get more excited about the looks than the works. I'll leave the works to the engineering folks, and don't tell my wife I just made that statement. But no, you could say, well, that's pretty superficial, Todd. But I would argue it's not. And I say that when I close my eyes and think about what Main Street was prior to 2014 and what it is now. And the random out of the blue phone calls I get from people who drive through our community who've never been here before, or who haven't been here for a long time, and say, wow, that community is doing we really appreciate how that has been transformed. So I will say, if I had a plea or an urging for the Plan Commission and the Village Board, is to share with me a care for how it looks, because in my opinion, it is not superficial. It is character building, identity building, and I think strengthens our community, and frankly, strengthens the development that happens alongside our corridor, which is beautiful, well-done projects. And I list the Tierney's in that camp. I list Kramer Development in that camp, and the businesses who've taken great care of their properties, like Chris's and Buck and Honey's and so on. So I hope that you will join me in those things. And if there is the low fruit that we can start to talk about and support, then I would say, I would urge us to start growing that, quite literally, growing that infrastructure. So thanks for letting me soapbox a little bit.
Thank you, Todd. We appreciate the perspective and the input. Yeah.
And sort of related to that, I did hear a few comments about how I don't see people walking in that area. And a lot of that has to do with how welcoming an area is to a pedestrian. So how many people did you see, for people who have been here much longer than I have, how many people did you see walking downtown before it was redeveloped versus how many people are walking downtown these days and using that downtown corridor? So some of it is, and I will bring my inner Iowan into this. If you build it, they will come kind of thing. It's a chicken and the egg kind of thing. But a lot of that has to do with the visual aspects of a corridor, and pedestrians are less likely to use a highway corridor. If you want to bring pedestrians, you need to have some pedestrian scale elements. And so related to what Todd said about what's been going on downtown, my guess, and I will completely admit this is a guess, but there are a lot more people using the sidewalks downtown these days than there were before all the redevelopment happened.
Become more vibrant. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, except that I think that will come when we have development and there's more density of people and activity in the area. Right now, it's not that dense yet, and it will come. The one thing I would say about what Todd said, and I agree, having a attractive entrance into this village is important, but honestly, I think this stretch looks pretty good. I think the stretch from Woodland to Main Street does not look good. And if I were to put my money into improving how it looks coming into the city, I would go from Woodland to Main Street first, because that, if you improve that and then you hit Woodland and you drive in, you'd be like, whoa, where'd I go? Because you have no trees, you don't have, you know, the sidewalks, you don't have any amenities when you get closer to where the businesses are and the people live. So that is my 2 cents. I've said that forever. I think it's backwards.
I'll agree with you, Sue. Going north is a corridor that
And it
there's
would
some
connect to Main
opportunity there
Street
too.
and connect to the downtown and maybe expand the downtown.
The only thing I would add is sitting on the patio that Inovino constructed. Granted, there's gonna be more stuff happening to the west, I get it. But there's nothing, I will say there's nothing about our corridor that is anything better than a road and grass. And if sitting on that terrace or opening the nice garage doors that they designed there to look due west, I believe there's an opportunity there for us to do better.
But it's a highway. It's gonna be always noisy
Yeah.
whenever you put those garages.
And I think, yeah, there's, I said it before when we
Can't
had
solve
this,
that.
is that there's opportunity to make some improvements from an aesthetics perspective here. But I would caution changing the functionality of this roadway as it
Can't get
accesses the village of Waunakee. You start pinching this down and trying to eliminate traffic, because that's what I see this as being more of than anything else, is trying to minimize and eliminate traffic. And you want people downtown and you start minimizing them here, they aren't going downtown. And then the whole village is gonna be like that. Let traffic flow. You already see it here. There's 25% of the traffic is dropping off at Peaceful Valley, and then another 10% or so at Woodland Drive. That's what it's functioned to do, is to get traffic off the road, but allow people to in and out of the village. And if we start pinching this down in lanes and trying to make it a more pedestrian and walkway, nobody's walking from here to downtown at all. So I think we need to maintain functionality. We can combine functionality with pedestrian safety and with aesthetics, but it needs to maintain its functionality. And expense, I know Chris mentioned that before, the other person that has talked about that. And I'm a little fearful that if we support this or pass this as accepted, and I read this red highlighted comment in here about considering that the left turn lane at Yeski Drive has not been built, plans could be adjusted prior to install to shift the median curb along the left turn lane if bike lanes were to be removed from this segment. This potentially will save on construction costs and provide an opportunity for additional median plantings. What that statement says to me is not what we talked about earlier about Yeski Drive, but whatever's in this is already moving forward. I guarantee it will be coming forward, and I don't know if we'll have a say on changing it if this is accepted as is. I think there's a lot of other things we can look at. Timing of lights. We've talked about painting crosswalks to try to improve pedestrian safety. You know, if you want to extend lighting so that people get across, which again, we haven't seen a lot of people crossing for the schools, but that was one of the comments that was, or reason why this started, because of the schools to the west. Well, let's work on timing of lights to allow more people to get across so that they can cross from one side of the road to the other, not have to wait in the median. We talked about striping, lighting and visibility. If you want to have off-road pedestrian walkways or multi-use paths, great. Let's put some decorative lighting there to lighten that up. But I think the lights that go down the corridor right now, it's lighting up the driving surface, which is what is intended to do. And it does a great job of that. Why go change it and potentially dim it up? And then we're talking about how that, from my perspective, counteracts pedestrian safety. So I can't say anymore. That's my comments on it.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more comments? If none, do we have any action we want to take? Going once? Going twice? All right. All right. It doesn't require action. Nope. There's a recommended motion. It goes to village board whether or not we approve it, correct? Yeah. So, all right. Thank you, Steve. We appreciate the work. I'm sure we'll see you at village board on the 21st. It says the 20th in the notes. We're meeting Tuesday, the 21st.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item up, discuss and take action to recommend a comprehensive plan proposal item for final action by the village board. And this is on page 92. And also Tracy and Lauren made a printout of the matrix from page 95. Wow. So, yeah, this is nicer. You can actually read it. Yeah. All right, Lauren.
So just to recap, we received 9 total proposals by the deadline in response to the RFP for comprehensive planning services, which we issued towards the end of October 2024. We narrowed down the list to 4 proposals, and those companies were interviewed in December 2024. However, with the size of the proposals and the amount of information that kind of came at everybody that night, Plan Commission just asked for another month to go over the proposals again and the information that was gathered at that meeting before making a recommendation to the village board. So we do have this matrix trying to compare as much as we can. There are some incomparables that you can't really account for, as well as some notes for the interview. And then we did receive some questions from Plan Commission members. I won't go over all of them, but they are listed individually in the cover page. And I did my best to answer those, both as someone who has hired consultants and someone who has been a consultant and written these contracts, what the answers to those questions would be. So really tonight, we're talking over those 4 proposals, those 4 interviews, and trying to come up with a recommendation to village board so we can take that to them next week to hopefully get started on a new comprehensive plan.
All right. So with that, should we go through them one by one and just get feedback? Brian, you had a hand go up. Do you want to go first?
Well, this question is for this, but it's also for the previous issue we had. How bound is the village board to the committee's recommendations?
Our recommendation here?
Today.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I would assume bound. I mean, it's typically worked that way, but we've seen votes go,
Yeah, has there been any examples where they haven't gone with the committee's recommendation?
oh, recently? Yes, there are a few.
Yes, I'm curious.
Yes. Would you
Well,
like me
to-
to enumerate them?
To be clear, it's the board makes a decision on who
Yeah.
to hire
Yeah,
to run the study.
yeah, they do. They do. All right. So with that, let's go one by one. So Lakota Group, what feedback do we have for Lakota Group? Mike, can I start with you?
I like their approach.
Mhm.
I thought it was interesting. I thought it was different. Something, I don't know, I'll call it refreshing, just the way they took, and maybe it's just because they don't have a lot of history with us or something. They're just, however their approach was, I just liked how they did it. And I thought it was good.
Excellent. Sue?
I was fine with their approach. I mean, I still feel pretty overwhelmed with all of these studies. They are just immense. And to be honest, I think it's really hard to know exactly what you're going to get. In the end, they're all experienced companies. I like having a company who, my preference is to have someone with local knowledge, and I don't consider that to be a negative. I consider it to be an asset because you don't have to spend a lot of time learning. You can put all your hours into, you know the area, you know what's going on and moving forward versus spending time on, okay, what currently exists because you're so unfamiliar with it. But that doesn't, and everybody's got biases, whether they're local or based on their experience or their preferences in planning, because there's lots of planning fads that come and go. It's popular that decade and it's not popular the next decade. So, but they all have good, good experience in them. I can't say, I mean, I really don't even know what else to say.
All right.
To tell you the truth.
All right. For Lakota Group, is there anything specifically that you were unhappy with or you were displeased?
Well, the one thing that I really want to happen and whoever we choose, and I couldn't really tell specifically, the community engagement, I think is so important in terms of talking to the people who live here and not just the organizations and the chamber or Rotary, which are great groups. And there are people who live here who are on those boards, but you need to get out into the community and the neighborhoods and the people to find out how they feel. I mean, I think people live here because they like it, but what is it that they would change? And try to get into that very specifically. I would not want to see a plan that made huge changes to Waunakee, because I think people like it here. There are things we tweaked and we're going to go into the future. What's going to change there? It's really hard to tell for sure, but I mean, that's just kind of my thought process. It's really hard to choose.
It is, it is. Trisha, how about you? In Lakota group specifically and everyone in general?
Well, I think for me, it sort of all goes together. But I think Sue really hit on, and one of the things that struck me, I liked them all. Like, they all did a great job. The presentations were good. The proposals were good. The thing that stuck out about me and probably put Lakota group in my top choice was because of the creativity that they showed and the amount of detail that they provided, and almost like excitement that they got around on that community engagement piece. And I think a big part of this process, there are a lot of new people in Waunakee since the last time that this process has taken place. And I think for them, it'll also be like a learning experience. They're, as part of this, and some of, so those social media things that'll come up, some of the workshops are just different ways of outreach and, getting feedback and getting insights. They're going to learn a lot more about the community that they live, that they never would have otherwise known as part of that. Not that all of them won't have some element of it. I just felt like that focus and the different aspects and prioritization that they provided just struck me as I thought they were, if I were one person picking, that's where I would go.
Excellent. Joe?
I'll probably be far more concise here, but,
Did you say I ramble, Joe?
no, just in general, I tend to be a little short on words, but, I was impressed with their experience and creativity for sure. The one concern that I have is with being from Chicago, is that bringing too big of a perspective to what is otherwise a relatively quaint village. So that's all.
Brian?
Good point, Joe. I was very impressed with Lakota Group. I was particularly intrigued by their ability to bring in some different partners that are both local and not local. And I think that could create some good debate and maybe bring some unbiased and open perspective to what is happening here, or what could potentially happen here in Waunakee. Plus, they've offered up to have community barbecues, so that could be all that.
All right, Chris?
Oh.
I read my notes.
All right, the barbecue. That's pretty
It
good.
is like page 132.
So I'm think I'm the only one who was pretty much born here, grew up here, knows the community and been here my whole life. And Lakota Group you would think, or I would have thought in my own words, that I would say they're last place immediately because they're from Chicago. Okay, and just to be clear with that. However, in listening to them, their approaches, how they brought the entire team to us. Even though they're from Chicago, they brought everybody. And that was important to me to show they're committed and choosing us. They want to work with us. Other people, submitted. I think these guys submitted because they chose us because we're Waunakee and we're so unique. And I've always believed that we're unique in this whole marketplace. And they excelled at getting me to buy into that. So they were actually my first choice. Now I could still be swayed. I'm not, 100% because I think all four are good. There's nobody's going to be a bad choice. They're just my number one at this point. So I'm hoping tonight that some of you may be able to change that mind potentially. But that's where I'm at right now with this.
For me, they were also my number one choice, and it was based on the community engagement aspect of it. You have the long list of activities that to choose from. I assume we don't do all of them because that is really comprehensive. If we do, that is an amazing schedule. They have a lot of digital outreach, which I liked, a website dedicated to it, some other ways of getting material out to people who might not be able to show up that I really appreciated it. And then their schedule and timeline looked really good. I also like that they referenced the walk shops, walking and doing interviews on the street. So the walk shops and the, they call it Lakota on the street too, where they just hang around and talk to people downtown. I thought that was a really nice way of engaging amongst the more formal ones. So second up, let's do WGI. And can we start from the inside? Trisha, can you go first? What feedback did you have on WGI?
This again too, kind of to Chris's point before, where while they're outside of the area, the fact that they were here and present the entire meeting and they sat through a lot of other things as well and then stayed after while we deliberated, just to show that their commitment to it and the reason why they were interested in Waunakee and kind of the uniqueness that we have and the potential that they felt that they would have to bring a different perspective to the process. Also very creative team. I felt just the personalities were very engaging. I just liked them too. Like off the bat, you just could relate to them. I don't really have anything negative other than while they're not from Wisconsin, it's a lot farther. It's a lot different than even, Chicago at least has Midwest personality associated with it. And a lot of their team members are, while they might not be in Dane County, they are in nearby counties based out of. So it's just a little bit more familiarity with the area.
Sue.
The one thing I had some concerns about is they did identify 15,000 included for travel, which meant to me that, and they're pretty far away, that they would not be able to travel here very often, or they would not meet their budget objectives. And so I really think people have to be here, like the Lakota group being in Chicago, they can travel up here, they can be here. People, and do that kind of on-site work that I think is needed. I think they also had more experience in different areas of the country versus the Midwest. And I do think it's important to have more experience here because it is very different from the East Coast and the South. So, I mean, they were talented, those would be my key points.
Mike.
Echoing what Sue said, all the groups were very good. I just am concerned that I'm kind of like you, where I'm kind of a homer, where you want the home team a little bit, and just even Midwest to me we're just different here. People talk about Midwest nice and everything else. It's just different. And I just think that's important to have people that get that. So they did a great job. I was impressed with them. That would be my only knock against them. Otherwise, they would be a very good candidate.
Joe.
They tied with Lakota Group at the top of my list. As far as the people that were here, I think the personalities were fantastic. I mean, they were just so comfortable, and I think that's a key part when we start doing community sessions. Now, of course, the big question is, are they specifically the ones doing those sessions, or are there others that end up in that role? I loved their creativity. Their distance was a concern, as well as in my mind, potentially a benefit, because it does bring a very different perspective outside of the Midwest view. Is that good or bad? I don't know. But additionally, it adds costs, and that is a concern for sure.
Brian.
Well, I'm gonna echo that. Like, every one of these firms is professional. I'm sure that every one of them will do a great job for us. I liked WGI. I thought they were very personable. They brought some different perspective. The fact that they came here, stayed a couple of nights and walked the community, I thought showed their commitment. I had them towards the top as well.
Chris.
Exact same comments.
Yeah.
To everybody right there.
Yeah, me too. I thought they just really hit it out of the ballpark. I really enjoyed the conversation we had with them. Thought they had some great insights, but the distance is really something. Yeah. All right, next up, Mead and Hunt. Chris.
So I think Mead and Hunt is a exceptional company, organization. I did have a little challenge with opinion of what the village should be, was really came out strong from the presentation. That it was almost like they were wanting to steer us to what they wanted us to be. That was my biggest challenge, and that's a presentation style. That doesn't mean that we're gonna do that. That's just the presentation, how it appeared to me. So it kind of turned me off a little bit as a result of that. It is good that the person who was presenting is here tonight, and he's a Waunakee resident, and I appreciate that. But it was challenging for me to hear, this is what I'd like to see for the people that, what I want to see the community become with nightlife or whatever it might be for his family and what he felt. So I struggled with that.
All right, let's ping pong. Mike.
I picked up on the same thing you did. Do a great job. We're Waunakee and we're unique, and it isn't gonna be for everybody. And I think we have to have our own identity, and it's not Madison, it's not Sun Prairie, it's us. And that would be the only thing I'd say is I'm looking for something that fits us and somebody that's looking to see who we are and develop based on that.
Brian.
Well, I think those are great points. I think, my concern going through this whole process is we have to be careful of the pressures that we get being in Dane County. There is so much pressure put on between the university and the city of Madison and Dane County to be what CARPC or whoever else wants everybody to be. And you hear it from everybody here about the uniqueness of Waunakee. So how do we make sure that that becomes part of this process? Because this is going to drive the next 10 years, 15, whatever the time period, okay? And, I may not be around to see the end of it, but I don't want to see it change so drastically, because again, people move here for the amenities and the culture and the community. They're not moving, certain places in Madison or whatever, they're moving here because of those reasons. And how do we make sure with whomever we go through and use for this process that we keep that identity, so.
Sue.
Can I just talk about that specific point? Something I forgot to mention. The one study that the Lakota group did was the Dane County Regional Housing Strategy. And that is all Madison. And that I would want to make sure that we don't have to abide by everything. They've got some good recommendations in the plan, but there's a very anti-single family home effort in certain parts of Dane County, Madison in particular. I would hate to see us lose that, because that's why I think people move here. Not that you don't need multifamily, we do, and we have some great new stuff that's been built here, but so I just forgot about that point.
That's right.
I
No,
wanted
thank you
to
for making
raise
it.
that,
Yeah.
because they did that study.
Yeah.
Mead and Hunt's great company. In various places I've worked, they've used them. I think they do a good job because they are here. I do like that. The fact that they know us, I didn't really read into it that they already knew what needed to change. Maybe I missed that, but I didn't read into it. They'd be one of the firms that would start out running because they're familiar with what's around here. And they've done enough studies all over the place that they know what else is out there, what other opportunities there are. So they'd probably to me, they'd be a safe choice, but maybe they're not the more innovative one you're looking for.
Joe.
I think a lot of the comments that have been made really reflected the same thoughts that I've had. Having a local tie is fantastic. But I do have some concern that could that in any way overpower or influence the end result. And I would suspect not, but don't know.
Tricia?
Agreed with everything. I think the other thing that, and maybe this is just a personal bias just based on.
Mike? Oh,
Thank you. Good thing I hadn't really said anything substantial yet. No, I agree with everybody on the points that they've made, and I've actually worked with Mean Hunt's team, like incredible people, think very, very highly of them. Obviously, we've worked with MSA a lot, so I'm lumping my next two together.
All right.
Okay, and think of great. I think the diversity of different companies and consultants and bringing subject matter experts in from outside of a core like organization to blend and kind of fit what the specific ask is, what our challenges are, what our process might be, I think is where I've also got not just to where they're from and they're outside of, you know, the area, so they might have a different perspective, but I think that mix of professional expertise that they've brought together is sort of what sets them like the first two apart from the second two.
Right. I will say for Mead and Hunt, I always like a hometown team. I really like that. They had some analytics that were in their proposals, and they talked a little bit about that I thought were really interesting and not offered by anybody. They don't rank as one of my top choice, but I'm really intrigued by them as a consulting company and thinking that in the future too, we should maybe consider working with them when we can. MSA Professional Services, Joe, do you want to lead off?
Sure. I'll be quick on this one as well. You know, we've done, as a village, we've done a ton of things with MSA. They know us, they know our processes, they know probably, you know, more about us than we know about ourselves. I'm concerned that that may mean that they're too close.
Mhm.
So that's all.
All right, and Tricia, you combined?
I'm done.
All right, Brian?
I would echo the same thing. I think I mentioned that before, that we've got a great working relationship with MSA on several things. Obviously, today was another example of that. But I am a little concerned on, as Joe said, like they did the last one, you know, maybe that's all good, right? And maybe we just want to continue, but it, you know, do we want it to be cookie cutter or is that what it is? Not saying that's what it would be, but you know, there's that potential, right? And it just, maybe a change, maybe a different perspective, a fresh look would be of value, so.
Thank you, Brian. Sue?
MSA did do the last one, and I thought they did. I was actually around during that time frame. And they did an excellent job on it. They really laid the groundwork for what the village has become. Because what is a comp plan for? Comp plan is to tell developers and people who want to do things in this community where they can do it and how they can do it, but also not to constrain some innovation that might occur. And things do change. I mean, change is happening so much faster than it used to, but 10 years goes pretty fast. So, you know, again, I think they do a good job. They have a lot of experience. I do think of them as being much more technical though, as opposed to creative. Because everything they give us is so technical and very good work, but I don't think, and I think the fact that they did the comp plan helps them as well, because they know what was in it and they kind of know where we were and how we got to this point. So I think those are positives.
Chris?
So I have worked with MSA for a lot of years. I was involved pretty heavily with the last comprehensive plan, and that was a difficult comprehensive plan because it was a joint comprehensive plan at the time between Westport and Waunakee. So pulling the two communities together, having to get input from everybody on all different sides and put it together that we could all be accepting and that it was a very solid plan. They did a wonderful job, no doubt about it. With the current circumstances of what's happening with Westport and Waunakee and what they want to do is great. That's what they're going to do at this point. Waunakee's going to do what we have to do. And I think our comprehensive plan is going to be important, probably the most important thing we are doing this next year too, in getting this in place. And I think MSA, being the local company with the experience, is a really good thing, a positive thing. I think that Waunakee has changed in these last 10 years. And I think they had something to do with that, to your point, Sue, informing that. But I also think that Waunakee's change has new people here with new ideas and new thoughts. And I like it. That's the downside for MSA to me right now, is I feel like we might get same old that we had, which is nothing wrong with that. If we want to stay conservative to the max and not make any changes with things, I think that there's better choices. That's why they just didn't come to the top for me.
Thank you. Mike?
I agree with, at this point, everybody's kind of shared my thoughts, and I think they did a great job. It's a big reason why we are what we are today. I just think it's maybe time to just try a new perspective for the next one and get something a little different this time.
All right. I'd say I'm in agreement. Really appreciated everything that they've done and their continued partnership. So with that, do we have kind of a consensus here? Do we want to go down the row and say who our first choice is? Chris, who's your first choice? Or do we want to give rankings first, second?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Process?
Sure.
Is there, whoever gets chosen, who sits, thanks for keep doing that. Who, how do you mold the actual study ultimately? I mean, because I see certain things that are really critical. Everybody's cost is pretty much the same. One thing is, I wish we didn't have to do this comp plan right now, because I really want to know what's going to happen with Westport, because that has such a huge impact on our future. I mean, it has, I don't know how we plan without knowing, to tell you the truth. And the listening to people, to me, just has to be so critical, because as you say, on one hand, we love Waunakee, we want it to stay the way it is with its character, but we have new people and they may want something different. Tell me how you resolve that. You know, so we'll have to be very careful in crafting the ultimate movement forward. And is there that opportunity with all of them?
I think all of them provide that opportunity. I will say, I think Lakota Group probably has the most creative outreach program for engagement. Whether it's in an a la carte or an all-in kind of thing, it's still really interesting and fantastic things to choose from. And the fact that they worked on something like the Dane County Regional Housing Study. When Chris was mentioning that MSA was kind of brokering a deal basically between Waunakee and Westport for what was an acceptable plan, there were dozens of stakeholders in the Dane County Regional Housing Study. And regardless of what the outcome of that was, what I haven't heard was that anyone felt unheard as part of that. And so I think that's really important that they have those skills to be able to create consensus and overcome any conflict that might come up. But I think just having been a planner for as long as I have, it's something that kind of comes second nature to any planner. So I don't think that's necessarily something that you wouldn't get from another consultant. They just might approach it differently. When it comes to being out in the community, we did ask in the RFP, these specific stakeholders were identified. First, the general public, village boards, commissions, and committees, local businesses, the school district, village departments through their department heads, underserved communities in the village, including seniors, disabled, youth, low-income individuals, BIPOC communities, LGBTQ, special needs, and non-native English speakers, as well as anyone else who might be identified. And so through the RFP, we're really specific that we wanted a really broad array of input throughout the community, not just from one specific stakeholder group. And that comes through in every single one of these proposals.
Other questions or comments? Right, and I think it's a good one about Westport. I do believe we will have a resolution on Westport, within, they're planning on going in front of the review board relatively soon. So by the time this is fully under its way,
A final decision then?
it'll give us a good indication, and then they'll have to go through their referendum. So we won't know for sure until the referendum, if they get that far, that the referendum would pass, if they're allowed to continue. But I think that will happen while we're going through this process. Unless, and Todd, I would defer to you too for any input on that, as far as timeline is concerned.
Yeah, but I think it's fair to share, and we've shared this publicly with the village board at their meetings too, that we've had several exchanges in relation to what an incorporation looks like at a staff and legal level with, and key leadership with the president and the board chair between Waunakee and Westport. I think we're on version 3. We're probably going to be approaching 4, maybe there'll be a 5, and we're updating the board regularly. And I would say I feel optimistic in that every step of the way there's progress made and interest in finding a win-win
Yeah.
solution. So I'm with you there, Kristen, about being confident on that.
We'll know. Hopefully sooner rather than later. Thank you for asking that, because that is really important and important for us to discuss. So with that, any other comments or questions about these 4 very excellent proposals? Do we have a recommendation we would like to make? I'd like to recommend to the board, make a motion that we recommend Lakota Group as our consultant for the comprehensive planning process.
Second that.
Any discussion on the motion?
One thing I will note is I think we could make a recommendation to the full village board that they watch the plan commission meeting from tonight to help inform them in their decision-making too, because I think you had some thoughtful comments across the board on the proposals.
Great. A good discussion. Any comments? Chris? Yeah. You're getting ready to vote? Oh, okay. Okay. No, you look like you had any discussion on the motion before we, all right. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for everyone that submitted a proposal. We appreciate the work and the effort. With that,
Move to adjourn.
wow, we've got
We're not done yet?
one more thing. Waunakee Westport Joint Plan Commission update. I always forget that one too. Oh, yeah.
There's nothing on the agenda, so Joint Plan Commission's been canceled.
All right. Now I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Joe and Tricia, I wanted to follow up.